Here we are at Taylor Creek at St. Anne de Beaupré volcano. St. Anne de Beaupré volcano was Jesus Christ's grandmother. And she's got part of her finger up in Canada, above Quebec City, downriver from Quebec City, St. Lawrence River. So, St. Anne de Beaupré has a collapsed caldera volcano. So, Jeff, what is a collapsed caldera? And can I find any gold around there?
So you'll be successful out in the field. You see those mountains in the background? Those are the Black Mountains of Arizona. They produced over 2 million ounces of gold. We're not far from Gold Road or Oatman. You have to ask yourself, why did this area produce so much gold? And the secret to that is because it sits on the outer margins of a collapsed caldera. Most of your major gold deposits in the world actually sit on the outer margins of collapsed calderas. Now, why are collapsed calderas a perfect place to find gold? Because they create the perfect environment for epithermal and porphyry deposits. Now, for those of you that don't know what a collapsed caldera is, it looks something like this. A caldera is a large cauldron-like hollow that forms shortly after the emptying of a magma chamber in a volcano eruption. The collapse is triggered by the emptying of the magma chamber beneath the volcano, sometimes as a result of a large explosion or volcanic eruption. The flanks of the volcano see fissure systems crack and open up as well. If enough magma is ejected, the empty chamber is unable to support its own weight of the volcano effidas above it. Circular fracture or fault ring develops around the outer edge of the chamber. Ring fractures serve as feeders for fault intrusions, which are also known as ring dikes. And the reason why that they're perfect for creating epithermal deposits and porphyry deposits, they generate a lot of heat off of that magma chamber. And as it rises, so it creates nice little fractures and fissures in the basement rock. As it begins to cool, steam comes off of it, mostly in the form of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and water vapor. This is especially true if it's a felsic magma chamber. By the way, don't touch these, okay? Once they get their hands in you, you're not getting them out. Now, the way that you get different compositions inside of your magma chambers is for a whole nother video. But just know there's 3 classifications for them: mafic, intermediate, and felsic. Felsic is going to be responsible for the majority of your gold deposits. Felsic is going to be anything high in silicon, like rhyolite, dacite, and of course its intrusive counterpart is granite in the granitoid family. Now, the caldera we're standing in right now is the Silver Creek caldera. It erupted 18.5 million years ago, and it was classified as a supervolcano. It was so massive, it ejected an ash plume with pumice and country rock as far away as Barstow and all the way into Kingman. And in fact, you can still see some of this ash flow in the form of tuff outside of Kingman, Arizona on the interstate. It's called the Peach Spring tuff. Thickest parts of the ash flow tuff was recorded at being 140 meters deep. In fact, if you look up on the ridge here, you can still see remnants of it. Right there. See that white band all the way across? That's part of the ash flow tuff that was ejected out of this supervolcano. Here's a good example of the ash flow tuff that was ejected out of this caldera. Now keep in mind, after a massive explosion, all that material goes up in the air. A lot of it's going to come right back down. And that's exactly what this is. And this tuff extends all the way to Barstow and to Kingman, if you can imagine how large that is. The only thing we have that's even close to that is Pinatubo and Krakatoa. And those were very minuscule compared to the size of this eruption. Here you can see the west side of the caldera has completely eroded away, leaving only the east side, which is west of Oatman. In this aerial view, we're looking northwest. You can see the moss mine in the background, which is on the outer margins of the collapsed caldera. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because if you start looking for these collapsed calderas and you overlay it with MRDS, and then you overlay that with known mining areas, and then a geological map, you're going to see a large pattern start to form. and that will tell you exactly where you need to prospect for potential lode deposits. What you're looking for is any of the fault systems that are radiating out around the fracture rings of these collapsed calderas on the outer margins. And sometimes these fault systems are actually going to cut through it. Those fault systems are the ones that are going to be the richest. We're currently sitting on the Mallory fault line, which extends all the way into Oatman, and it connects up with the Tom Reed mine. This is a hydrothermal deposition model. It has a 75 to 80 degree dip, and it trends to the northwest. The values on this vein start off at 1/4 ounce per ton on the surface, and at 55 feet, it reaches 1.5 ounces. Now, the quartz vein itself is hosted in green chloritic andesite. And it looks like this. It's got chloride.
I have to put in an advertisement now for the Adirondack Mountains. Don't be lazy, subscribe. God wasn't lazy. After he made heaven and earth, he made the universe. And he made man so good that if you have high blood pressure, a chiropractor can work on that to lower it. And if you have to take medicine that lowers your immune system, you can tell that by FDA makes them say if you can get something bad with this medicine. And the chiropractor can work on that too. Collapsed caldera. You get there just about pointing that sign, or we will walk over here. And follow this little ridge at the other end. Just a little ridge.
Howdy folks, I'm Keith Bowen and this is Hard Rock University. Today's lesson is, where does gold come from? This is a gold-bearing quartz vein in southern Arizona, and in a certain way, this is where gold comes from. However, the story starts long before this vein was formed and much farther underground. Tens of millions of years ago in southern Arizona, we went through a long period of volcanic activity. During this activity, molten rock from deep in the earth called magma would rise toward the Earth's surface and form magma chambers. And they got to weak areas in the rock. As the magma chamber would fill, the surface above it would rise, and most importantly for our purposes, cracks would form. If magma kept intruding into this chamber, eventually it would find one of these cracks and work its way to the Earth's surface, and it would erupt and form a volcano. Now, here we have the cracks from which we form veins. Where did the minerals come from? Inside the magma, kind of as steam dissolved in the molten rock, is water. And as the magma would cool, that water would condense and liquefy and dissolve a substantial amount of minerals, which could then be moved into and deposited into the cracks. In addition, assuming you have a water table, which we have almost everywhere on the planet, groundwater would work its way in from the sides, get heated by the magma chamber, and rise. As it would rise up through these cracks, near the bottom where it was really hot, it would dissolve minerals, and as it got cooler, it would eventually start losing those minerals, dropping them out of solution in a process called precipitation. Now, As these minerals precipitated, here is a crack in the rock with solution moving through it. By the way, these solutions are called hydrothermal solutions. Basically means hot water. As the hydrothermal solutions would move through the cracks, if it's in a cooling zone, it would start depositing like scale on the sides of the cracks, just like scale forms in a pipe, except this is a lot different mineral. Scale in pipe is usually calcium carbonate. This would generally be quartz, various metallic sulfides like pyrite, chalcopyrite, galena, things like that, and gold and silver. As time went on, assuming the process continued, didn't shut itself off somehow, this crack would completely fill up with minerals, and you now have a vein. Now there's a structure that looks a lot like a vein called a dike. Basically, one of these cracks gets filled with magma and then it cools. But a dike looks substantially different than a vein. They're not easily mistaken for one another. The other way you get ore deposits from these hydrothermal solutions, if they're moving through a porous bedrock, spongy enough to allow the water to move directly through it, then it can start precipitating quartz still embedded in bedrock, along with smaller pieces of loose rock called float that start at the vein and continue downhill from it. If the quartz had a lot of weathered sulfides in it, it would generally be stained red to reddish brown and might be called a skarn, but outcrop is more common. Outcrop is also more likely accurate because skarn is technically the name given to a particular type of metamorphic rock. Skarns may outcrop, but outcrops are rarely true skarns. Anyhow, as the vein weathers and breaks down over time, any gold in it becomes part of the soil next to and downhill from the vein. This gold in close proximity to the rock from which it is weathered is called a residual placer. Since the largest gold particles tend to move the least, a residual placer is a good place to try metal detecting. Downhill from the residual placer until it reaches the first watercourse will be what is called an alluvial placer or hillside placer. It can be rather arbitrary trying to draw a line between the residual and alluvial placers, but sometimes there is a marked change in the concentration of gold. In the long run, it doesn't really matter what you call it, so long as you know it's there. Once the gold reaches the nearest stream bed or river, it becomes part of what is known as an alluvial placer or streambed placer. Irregularities in the bedrock or channel can form a natural gold trap and concentrate large quantities of gold over many years. Any gold that doesn't get trapped will tend to move downstream during floods in a preferred path, and when the water recedes, the sediments will stop moving, and those zones of gold along that preferred path.
Here's some starting pine trees are growing. And there's my vehicle. It's on the road. Here's the road here. Taylor Creek. The sign has to be somewhere pretty close. So we'll go down, right down there somewhere. See what the collapsed caldera looks like. This side's a little higher. And it goes down. There's some red pine trees and Scotch pine in there. That's how I found my son Paul Tooley's casino. So I came over here and happened to see another one. Here are some red pine trees mixed in with white pine trees. I really didn't find this till later. What I found was a volcano side vent where it was puking out stones, boulders. That was my first clue to find it. So I started looking around there. That's about in that direction. Some more 1930s CC camp planting trees. A little bit higher over that way. I think look, collapse down here. Now we'll go over to the volcano side vent area where it's kicking out boulders. The side vent of a volcano will pump out these stones just like Hard Rock University Lesson 1. He talks about how gold comes. And when my son and I got our metal detector, the guy said out west it has some sayings. Gold, iron is the mother of gold, and another saying, gold gives birth to gold. So when we was out west, my son and I, same time as 2020 when COVID hit, he fell down and hurt his leg. Then when he was home, he kept lifting his pants to move the leg so he could walk. But when he got up the next day, he couldn't move his arm. So when we got here, we rode around all over the Adirondacks, and he says that when he noticed that there's a lot of boulders, it was only one-sided and a lot of flat-sided. And I noticed there's only one side of a hill. So we just rode around all over the Adirondack Mountains. Up on Blue Mountain Road, next to a sign, next to a New York State sign. I think it was a fishing one. there was Forrester must have moved some kind of rocks because you could tell the rocks were rhyolite. And from there, it was sand all over to Paul Smith's college. All there was Paul Smith. When we was down to Harrisville, we seen a giant boulder, a lot taller and bigger around than that one. And it looked like, and from there, there was pine trees, so it was sand from there all over downhill. So I'll show you Hard Rock University, where gold comes from. Oh, that's it for the 3 Rhyolite movies that I found in the Adirondack Mountains. If the gold got anybody's blood boiling to get outside, do something different, the next movie is going to be about the tools I use to go out try to find gold. I have to put in an ad for my YouTube movie, Fisher Castle, a Fisher sent communication station. The fishers and raccoons, you'll see them doing things that nobody saw before or knew about. The ad will show you, the real short ad will show you fishers. The short ad will show you fishers doing things that nobody saw before. And you will see that the fisher's nervous system is not like humans. I have to put in an advertisement now for the Adirondack Mountains. Hi, my name is Gareth Tooley. I'm the CEO of 22nd Century New Technologies Company, Incorporated. I got this name a long time ago because I looked at small, very small stocks. One of these stocks made scrubbers for CO2 scrubbers for electric coal burning smokestacks. These scrubbers took out CO2. This is what Biden is worried about. Everybody knows that they made fire extinguishers from CO2 because the CO2 would go down to the ground and stay there and smother the fires. And a long time ago, there was a guy that had tuberculosis. He went up to the Adirondack Mountains. In 3 weeks, he was cured. In that 3 weeks, when he went there, he thought he was going to die. So he made a tuberculosis hospital where they fixed tuberculosis. That's how clean the air is up in the Adirondack Mountains. And when it gets 20 to 30 degrees outside, the cold weather takes all this CO2 right down to the ground. Captain Joe says, when you look up the air and see the jets going by, and you see fumes behind it, that's just like your breath when you're outside cleaning your windshield wipers. So you can think of Al Gore when he's flying around in his jet. He's helping the planet because all that jet fumes, CO2, is going down to the ground and into the ocean. And he's saving the seaweeds to be grown. So he's saving the planet.
Take your best, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What % of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What % of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess, it's okay.
About 5%.
Right?
I'll just follow you.
We'll go 7.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
Right? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreher.
7.
7. Do you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
Price is right.
8. I'm gonna get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to I put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not a half of a percent. It's 0.04%. It's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off. So let me ask Mr. Boyd, what are a lot of your vehicles Tier 4 already, or the vehicles that you know about in the industry?
Yes.
All right, so that's the cleanest burning diesel equipment you can get, right?
Yes,
All right, how about Mr. Dreyer, what do you think?
yes.
Okay, so why would anybody be anxious to go out and change out all those vehicles that you've been upgrading? In my home state of California, CARB has eliminated lots of equipment. Trucks, you know, we're down at least 70,000 truckers, and all because they don't make a mandate for a 2011 or newer vehicle. And so it's gonna be harder to get things from the ports, all this, all that. So